Hi, and welcome to another edition of the Trustcast Show. And really happy to have with us today Ray Maldonado, Ray Ybarra Maldonado. Got to get the whole thing in there. Welcome to the show, Ray.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate you having me, Zane.
Okay, let me adjust my. Okay, so um, Ray grew up on the Arizona Mexico border, dropped out of Stanford Law to stand between armed vigilantes and migrants in the desert, like a crazy person. And then he built one of the Phoenix's most feared immigration and criminal defense firms. Ray, you literally left law school to follow armed Minutemen through the Sonoran Desert. What was happening out there that made you think that that was worth putting your whole career on hold?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, describing me as a crazy person is about as accurate an introduction I've had in my life, Zane. Thanks so much for that. But it really was the situation down there that I just felt so dire that it was in need of attention that I thought it was worth putting off law school to go down there and do something about it. The number of people who have died crossing the US Mexico border is an untold human rights tragedy that this country should be ashamed of. And when that was happening, armed racists were coming to the town where I was born, where my parents and generations of my family has lived for decades and decades, and they were going to hunt for people that could be my family members. So I said, yeah, a law degree is great, but getting up and standing up for justice is even better. So I decided to take the crazy action and take time off from law school to go down there and follow these armed racists with video cameras in the middle of the desert.
So, being an immigration lawyer in the administration, so I'm going to stay out of the politics of this. I'm just going to talk about because I just try to stay out of the politics, but I'm going to ask questions that are to the point. But being a an immigration lawyer in today's administration, that's a pretty tough sledding, isn't it?
Yeah, no, being an immigration lawyer during the second Trump administration is even more frustrating than it was the first time. But it really gives you back to your core. Like what do you wake up in the morning for? What did you go to law school for, if not to fight on behalf of those who are being targeted and oppressed when they're just trying to do something good for themselves and their family? So it is a battle, it's a kick in the gut every single day. But are also opportunities to do good and to be good and to live a righteous life and defend people's rights and defend the Constitution. And I'm proud to do that daily. And just today, again, we won another federal habeas corpus where we sued the Trump administration for violating constitutional due process rights of the person detained, and we won. So we're going to continue to have victories and we'll continue to wake up and fight, even if we don't have victories.
So tell me about that one because I always like to just get straight to. I have a whole. I always have a bunch of investigation. I did my full investigation on it,
Mhm.
my dossier, uh,
Nice.
and but then I always kind of throw it to one side if I get off on this. So tell me about the situation you had today.
Yeah. So, what the Trump administration has been doing is denying people bond hearings if they entered the country without a visa. I've been doing immigration law for 16 years. This has never happened before. Anybody that's put in proceedings, they give a chance to have a bond as long as you don't have a certain criminal conviction. Well, now people that have been here 25, 30 years, five US citizen kids, no criminal history whatsoever, immigration is saying you are not entitled to a bond hearing. So, what we're having to do is file in federal district court habeas corpus petitions arguing that this administration is violating the procedural due process rights by denying them a neutral hearing in front of a judge to determine if they're a danger or flight risk. And we're winning those. Not with all the judges, but just today we won another one. And we're going to continue to win them because we truly believe that individuals have that right to be with their family and they have the right to be reunited. And a neutral adjudicator is the one should make the decision if they can come home or not, not just a random policy decision that really flies in the face of the Constitution.
So in the news, we just hear about that we're going after the criminal illegal aliens. Is that not been your experience? What you're describing is not that.
You know, what you hear in the news about the administration targeting only people with criminal convictions is absolutely 1000% false. I've been practicing immigration law for 16 years. I've done this under different administrations. It's even worse than under the first Trump administration. They are so hard trying to get numbers to skyrocket and to look like they're doing a tremendous job, that anyone that they can grab without status, even someone that's elderly, even someone with diabetes, with heart issues, 30 years, no criminal history whatsoever, they're still putting that person in front of a judge, hoping they can get a deportation order to up their numbers. So when people say, hey, it's only the criminals they're going after, absolute lie.
If so, ICE is showing up at homes, work sites, schools. If someone's undocumented or has mixed status in their family, what do they do in the next 24 hours if ICE shows up?
Absolutely. When anybody has an encounter with ICE, and I can tell you from experience of living in Douglas, Arizona, Border Patrol would knock on my door. The best thing that I would do is not answer. We have no obligation to answer the door, to open the door, to speak with law enforcement, unless they have an order signed by a judge to enter the property. Then they need to be allowed in. Other than that, if ICE just shows up and knocks at your door, I 1000% tell people don't answer. Let them go away, or let them go ask a judge, a neutral arbitrator, this is my probable cause for a warrant to violate these people's constitutional rights into their home. Give it to me so I can come inside. So that's the first advice, is not open the door. Now, if you happen to be throwing the trash and they corner you, I also tell people, remember, you also have no legal obligation to answer any question from any law enforcement authority, even ICE. So you have the right to remain silent and ask for an attorney before you answer any of those questions. So with those two things, avoiding them altogether or not giving them information whatsoever, that gives people like me, an attorney, an opportunity to fight for their rights, to keep them in the country and keep them with their family.
So my family member just got detained. What do I do in the first hour?
As soon as your family member is detained, the most important thing you can do is reach out to a credible immigration attorney to get the process going to get them back home. The first thing ICE tries to do is get them to sign a voluntary departure or sometimes even a deportation order so that they can't fight for the right to stay in this country. So, what an immigration attorney does is they get their location, they find out where they're detained, they send faxes, they make phone calls saying, we represent this individual. They do not wish to sign a voluntary departure. They do not wish to be deported. They wish to see an immigration judge as fast as they can. If we can act right away and get that documented that we're exercising someone's right, we have a much higher chance of keeping them in the country.
So the difference between being detained and being deported, and does one automatically lead to the other?
Yeah, so when someone's detained by ICE or the federal authorities, they're taken from their home, they're deprived of their liberty, and they're put in a detention center, usually run by a private corporation for profit. When someone's deported, they're physically removed from the country and placed in Mexico or placed in their country of origin. If someone's simply detained, we still have an opportunity to do something. We can oftentimes ask for an immigration judge to set a bond hearing. We can ask for a cancellation or removal, asylum. If someone is deported, the options are much more limited. Usually a motion to reopen, arguing that something was wrong during that process of deportation, that they should be allowed to come back to the country and fight their case again.
So you mentioned catching protections people didn't even know they had. What are the ones most people overlook?
The the rights or the opportunities to stay in this country that most common are overlooked by individuals. The first one is a U visa. And a U visa is if you're the victim of a qualifying crime, you were assisting law enforcement in the investigation of that crime, and you were affected mentally because of that crime. There's an opportunity to ask for a visa, to ask for waivers for any grounds of inadmissibility and stay in this country. Another one that people often forget about is that it's the government's obligation to prove that someone is removable from the country. So simply challenging the NTA, the notice to appear, and arguing, hey, there isn't sufficient evidence here in the record to say that the government has actually met their burden to prove their case, you should throw this case out, let the person walk out the door. That's another one that people rarely think about, but can sometimes lead to miraculous victories when there is no other form of relief.
So if someone's been here for like 15 years, they have US born kids, are they automatically protected?
Someone who's been in the country for over 15 years, has US citizen children, they're not necessarily automatically protected, but there's a good chance that there's an opportunity we can do something. A lot of it goes back to the person's past history. If they've been here 15 years, but in year number 14, they received an order of removal that they didn't know about, or if they've previously been given a expedited order of removal at the border when they're first crossing, there's a chance that that person, even though they're arrested again, have no criminal history, still might not have any immigration options. So the most important thing that we can do pre someone getting picked up is find out about that immigration history to see whether or not when they do get picked up, if they do qualify for some form of relief like cancellation of removal, a bond hearing, or asylum.
So is 15 years, is that the magic number?
10 years is more the magic number that we look for to have somebody in the country. There's a law called cancellation of removal. And that law basically states if you've been in the country for 10 years, have qualifying relatives, which is a US citizen or legal permanent resident child under 21, spouse or mother or father, and you can show extreme and unusual hardship to one of them, you have the opportunity to cancel your removal and actually earn your green card.
So there's a lot of fear right now about even going to a lawyer. What do people need to know about confidentiality and what you can and can't share?
Yeah, the most important thing that people need to understand about confidentiality when it comes to lawyers is that anything you tell that lawyer remains privileged between you and your attorney. So the opportunity to go and tell the truth about everything that's happened to you and get an honest opinion from an experienced attorney is invaluable. An immigration attorney or any attorney, if you tell them something negative about you, that you enter without status, that you don't have papers, they can't pick up the phone and call ICE, right? The attorney client privilege protects you when you tell something to an attorney.
So, if someone gets arrested for something relatively minor, like a DUI, a drug charge, and suddenly they're facing deportation, how does that happen?
Yeah, so it's important to remember when we're talking about the interplay between criminal and immigration law, there are two different sets of laws, and each state has their own criminal laws. Immigration is the one encompassing federal law. There are certain crimes within state courts that people think are not a big deal. A DUI, a possession of a dangerous drug for the first time. Some of those are even like probation mandatory in Arizona. Well, sometimes if an immigrant takes that plea, that's probation mandatory for the state, they can't even put you in jail, that can result in someone being detained without bond in immigration and being removed from the country. So, understanding the interplay between criminal and immigration, what we call crimmigration law, is of such importance. And it's a niche area that we practice in to make sure anybody that does find themselves in the criminal court understands what those consequences are going to be when they get to the immigration court.
So, when you're talking about criminalization, criminal defense, do you need a criminal defense attorney and an immigration attorney? Excuse me.
Oftentimes, right, if you're a non-citizen and you're charged with a criminal offense, it is to your advantage to have both a criminal and immigration attorney, or what we like to call a crimmigration attorney, a criminal defense attorney who understands the immigration consequences and can craft pleas and make sure that the language put in these plea agreements won't have or will have less immigration consequences. It's absolutely essential. If someone's a US citizen and they get a certain charge, they might not need an attorney. Actually, it might be a waste of money to hire an attorney. But if you're an immigrant, could be the opposite. Could keep you from being able to stay in the country, or could end up in you being removed if your attorney doesn't say the right thing.
So your mother is Mexican though. Was she Mexican born and then she moved to the United States?
Yeah, my mom was born in the little border town called Agua Sonora, and she lived most of her life and grew up in Douglas, Arizona. Most people don't understand it, but it's literally like where the house where she grew up, my grandma and grandfather's house that we own now. You can be in the backyard. You can throw a rock into Mexico. I mean, I got
Mm-hmm.
a pretty good arm. I played baseball, Zane, right? So not everybody could do it, but it's that close. And it's really one community, even though it's two different countries.
Mm-hmm. Oh, then you got the fence.
A couple fences, a couple agents, but culturally, uh, people will go across the border to party, to go to funerals, to go to weddings. On both sides, it goes both ways. So the fence is there, and the fence separates the land physically, but the culture, the community, that can't be separated by a border fence.
Right. So you've gotten not guilty their verdicts on felony charges for immigrants in both state and federal court. How different is it defending an immigrant versus defending a citizen?
It's much more difficult.
Excuse me.
No problem. It's much more difficult to represent in the state of Arizona an immigrant, especially one that's non-English speaking, because there is an interpreter there. There already is that really underlying thought that why does your client need interpretation? if we're in the United States of America. So it adds that extra layer that goes beyond just the elements of the offense. But what you really have to do is when you're talking with the jury to remind them these are the elements of the offense and nothing else matters. The fact that they're arrested, the fact that they don't speak the same language you do, whatever it is, that doesn't matter. The test is, has the government proven beyond a reasonable doubt each and every element of the offense? And if there is any reasonable doubt, then you need to find not guilty in favor of my client, whether you like him or her or not.
Mm-hmm. So what does it mean when you win a case in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and why does that matter to someone sitting in a detention center in Eloy? Is it Eloy or Eloy?
Eloy. Eloy.
Eloy, Arizona.
Yeah. So the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals is essentially the highest court within the western part of the United States. It oversees the lower courts, including the state Supreme Courts in Arizona, California, Nevada, and oversees the immigration court. So if you don't win in front of the immigration judge in Eloy, if you lose at the Board of Appeals in Virginia, you oftentimes still have a right to go to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, where you get three judges that are appointed by different presidents and they're appointed for life. What a lot of people don't understand about immigration courts and the Board of Immigration Appeals, those are underneath the Attorney General's office, meaning the Trump administration can pick whatever judge they want, can fire whatever judge they want, and they can grab any case and reissue the decision even after an immigration judge has said so. It's at the purview of the Attorney General. Now, that stops once you get to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, because those three judges are appointed by different presidents and appointed for life. So there you have the opportunity to actually present your legal arguments and get a fair hearing in front of three random judges.
Oh, so now I didn't realize that. Now I'm beginning to understand why the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals has been disliked by so many different
Oh, yeah.
administrations.
Oh, everybody.
Across the
every
political
administration.
spectrum.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
Okay, I didn't realize that. Okay, so you've had cases completely dismissed through motions to suppress evidence. Walk me through what that looks like.
So a motion to suppress evidence is one of my favorite legal tactics within criminal and immigration court. We're using it now as well. When someone's arrested, it's not only the person that we need to look at. Did they do it? Did they not do it? That's not even actually a question in the criminal justice system at all. The question is, can the government prove beyond a reasonable doubt that they're guilty, that they met all the elements of the offense? And in doing so, when the government's making that proof, did the government themselves comply with the law? If the government did not, if they pulled somebody over without reasonable suspicion, or they arrested them without probable cause, even though they could later prove that that person's guilty, that's still a violation of the laws of the United States of America. And when we win an argument on that, people call it on a technicality. I call it a victory for the Constitution, because as we're seeing with this administration, yeah, go ahead.
I actually tend to agree on on the freedom clause that it's those kinds of things are really super important. I mean, set aside all the rest of the politics, those specific issues, in my estimation, are really important.
No, I 100% agree with you, Zane. There's a reason this country was founded. There's a reason we have a Bill of Rights. That's because the government from where those people came from was being abusive. And they wanted to make sure that that could never happen again on this land. So when we go in there and fight a motion to suppress, arguing Fourth Amendment violation or a Fifth Amendment violation, I really think we're upholding what the founders of the country wanted. And that was a nation of laws, not a democracy purely, where the majority always wins, the minority always gets screwed over.
Okay, so let's switch gears just a little bit for rapid fire. Baseball or law? Which one taught you more about fighting under pressure?
Baseball. Baseball is the foundation of it all, man. And when I'm in a courtroom or when I'm making a decision or talking to people, I often go back to, you know, being out there on the field and the ball comes your way and it hits a rock and you weren't expecting it. Your attitude of how you respond to that is the same when something happens in the courtroom that you weren't expecting. You got to get yourself up, pick yourself up again, forget about what just happened, have a short memory, and go back out there, continue to grind.
You named your sons Ray Emerson and Stokely Daniel. Those are big
Mhm.
names. What's that all about?
Yeah, so we're a big fan of Ralph Emerson. We're also a big fan of Stokely Carmichael. So Ray got the middle name of Emerson, and Stokely got Stokely Carmichael's name. and really just me and my wife love to read, and we love to philosophy, and we love politics, and we thought those were pretty fitting to give them to our children.
Okay. Well, toughest courtroom opponent you've ever faced, judge, prosecutor, or opposing counsel?
I mean, if I could go with another one, I would just say myself, right? Because it's really about that. It's about the preparation. Like if you don't put the time into preparing your case and knowing the facts and be ready to fight, you're your toughest opponent. But if I had to pick between those, who was it? It was judge, prosecutor, opposing counsel, and what else?
Yeah, I think that was it. Yeah, judge, prosecutor, opposing counsel.
Probably judge. I think, arguing at the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, there's some really sharp individuals there, and being ready for their arguments and being ready to think of whatever direction they're going to go in. That was probably the toughest.
So one thing a scared client tells you that immediately tells you that they're misinformed.
Oh, man. I think the extreme level of fear when I see someone trembling in my office and thinking if I show up to court, I'm going to be deported that day. That's probably the biggest indicator. And that happens often. It's people that are really misinformed about the process and how it works and think, well, if I have a date with an immigration judge and if I don't win, that means that day I'm taken in handcuffs. And it hasn't been that way so far. You still have the right to an appeal, 30 days, and that case could take 6 months, could take a year. So there's still opportunities to fight your case. But I think it's that just seeing that fear of even wanting to participate in the system because you think you're going to be detained the next time you show up.
So one of your first big cases was defending a worker caught in one of Arpaio's worksite raids. Can you talk a little bit about that case?
Yeah, when we started our practice, had no budget, had no money, and because we were activists in the past, doing the stuff like we'd done before at the border, activist people started sending community members our way. One of the first guys to come in the door, Miguel Angel's wife, because Miguel Angel was incarcerated, he was caught in a worksite raid done by a notorious sheriff named Joe Arpaio.
Mm.
I met with his wife and the little baby, and they were bawling. And I said, "Fine, I'll take the case." Right. So I went out and visited him and said, "Hey, plea offer is 90 days, but you're going to be deported for life, or we can fight the case. And if you lose, you probably get like 3 years. Which do you want to do?" Well, I have a U.S. citizen wife. I have a kid. I want to fight the case. And we got really lucky. Long story short, we came up with an argument through the help of other attorneys as well called federal preemption, that the federal government should be doing this, not the state. We were able to get some items suppressed as a result of those motions. Went to trial. The day before trial, Zane, I was like, what do we do? And me and my wife were in our office, like, what's our narrative? What's our argument here? And we finally come up with something, and just kind of it just all came together at trial. There was the foreman who didn't show up and had skipped town the week before. Boss testified that our client was the best worker he's ever had in his life. So it just started developing this narrative like, hey, this guy's such a good worker. Maybe the foreman filled out the documents for him and it was never my client. So long story short, comes back with a not guilty verdict on all counts for our client. He's able then to go to immigration court. After appeals, he's eventually able to win cancellation of removal and become a legal permanent resident. And now he's on the path to citizenship. And this is a case, Zane, that when I showed up to community meetings, people were yelling at me in front of everybody, how do you charge these people $5,000, take their case when you know he's going to be deported? There's nothing you can do. Well, it's about getting up and fighting. And even though you're the underdog, even looks like there's no opportunity, you still got to get in the ring and take your best shot. And that's what we've been doing year after year.
So how do you, this is not the lucrative career, being an immigration attorney, especially in this administration. How do you make ends meet? How do you, I mean, it's a tough kind of question to ask somebody, but it's the honest truth. I mean, you're the amount of work that you have to put in for the return on dollars. You have to kind of be on a mission, don't you?
It is definitely a mission driven business, a mission driven practice. But the crazy thing that I found, Zane, is if you don't worry about the money, you just serve the people and you give them more than what they're expecting, and you truly believe at the bottom of the heart they deserve a fight, and you put up that fight, beautiful things happen. I live a blessed life where I get to wake up every morning and go and fight. We have over 50 people on our team all over the world, and fight the good fight. And in addition to that, I spent a week last month, 2 weeks last month in Japan. I live in a multi-million-dollar house. I have horses. I have 5 cars. I'm living the dream. So the lucrative financial part is just the result of leading with passion and leading with service. And I would do it even if I didn't have all that stuff I named off. And I'm not doing it to brag. I'm just doing it more to tell people, if you are passionate about something, even though most people assume there's no money in it, there can be a significant amount of money in anything that you really care about.
So the case that eventually led to your firm becoming local counsel on the federal civil rights lawsuit that took Joe Arpaio down, how does a single worksite raid become that?
It really is just looking for any opportunity to fight for the bigger cause. Yes, I was fighting for Miguel Angel. Yes, we're fighting for them to be together, the wife and the children. But I know it sounds kind of crazy. Sometimes things just almost like they come out of the sky. Like, here's this issue or here's this idea that just pops into my head, pops into my wife's head, and it's like, let's run with this. And then you see it get a little bit of traction, and then you just step back and think, okay, well, if that argument worked for this individual in this trial, why wouldn't it work on a bigger scale? And then you combine with more intelligent and equally hardworking people, like we did with the ACLU and some other nonprofits and law firms, and good things can happen. It really is a small amount of people that create change. It's not have to be a mass movement to make these little changes that can make people's lives better.
So you become pretty well known. So do you even have to do marketing? I mean, how do you, uh, bring clients in, or is it mostly just word of mouth?
Yeah, for been in business now. I think we're going on year number 14 or so. And the vast majority of those that come through our doors are referrals. So we started very small by winning a few cases. Those people told a couple people, they brought some more in, and that's our number one source of business right now is referrals. We use social media, so we do a lot of marketing in terms of Instagram, Facebook, have a YouTube channel. So we'll get a little bit from those avenues as well. But for the most part, it really is just that you win one case and you're going to get two or three more people coming your way, and you compound that every day, and the next thing you know we have over 1,200 reviews on Google, and our phones are ringing off the hook, and we got 50 people working for us, and it just keeps the blessing keeps growing every day.
So you've argued in front of the Arizona Supreme Court on behalf of an immigration client. What was that like?
That was an amazing experience getting in front of the Arizona Supreme Court. I'm used to the Ninth Circuit, which is just three judges, and you get up
Mhm.
there in the state Supreme Court, and there's like a bunch of them there. It's like triple the amount of judges. So you really got to be on your toes. And I love it though. Again, it's a passion for me to get up and fight for an immigrant's right. And especially, it was kind of a case that we decided to grow our firm around. When I first started, I was content with being small. I was content with making $100,000 a year. It's more than my parents ever made growing up and raising four kids. So I thought that would be more than enough. But I kept hearing stories about people being being abused, being mistreated at other law firms. And this was one of those cases. So this individual went to a law firm, undocumented person. He said, they told him, take the plea, you'll be fine. You've been here a long time. Well, that plea ended up making him inadmissible, and he was given a voluntary departure from the country. So we filed a motion saying, hey, there was ineffective assistance of counsel. There's no way he should have been told he'd be okay. This is obvious. He was going to be inadmissible when he took this plea. And we took that case and fought it all the way to the Supreme Court. Arizona appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court, worked with the Yale Supreme Court Law Clinic to get that kicked out of there as well. So again, it was just an amazing experience to get up and say, hey, I'm here for this individual and for my community, which has been taken advantage of by this law firm for so many years. And now,
That's a
to
remarkable
be in a
win.
position to take them on. Thank you.
So you also co-wrote and co-produced a documentary that premiered at Sundance. What was that process like alongside everything else you were doing?
Yeah, before I was an attorney, really filmmaking was a passion. And I was in one that premiered at Sundance. I think the one I made never made it to Sundance, but we did win a few awards. I think United Nations Human Rights Film Festival and a couple others. But it really was no different than lawyering. Filmmaking, documentary, And lawyering is all storytelling, right? You just get up there and tell a person's story to the judge or to the jury or to the insurance company or to an audience. And I love to do that. I love to talk to someone. I love to make them feel comfortable, and I love to help them tell their story to a broader audience. I don't speak for anybody, not anybody's spokesperson, but if I have an opportunity to try to share that person's experience and passion for life and put it to an audience, a judge, a jury, or insurance company, I'm a happy man.
So, what's the biggest lie people believe about who can actually be deported?
I think the biggest lie people believe about who can actually be deported is that it's really hard to actually deport somebody. It's not like the amount of relief that we have to work with in immigration court is so limited. If someone's been here 9 years and 10 months, but not the 10 years. They don't qualify for cancellation. Asylum is unbelievably hard to win. And outside of that, that's pretty much all your options. So I think a lot of people think, oh, there's so many people here who are undocumented because it's so hard to deport them. No, not really. It's just the amount of resources to get people in front of a judge. And these judges are just going to barrel their way through and make sure they get deportation orders.
So, your book is literally a required reading at Harvard Law School. Is that right?
It was for a course. I don't think it is every year, but in that
Okay.
course particularly, it was. Yeah.
So, you wrote it right, arguing that immigration law is immoral and civil disobedience is necessary. Has your position on that softened at all?
No, not at all. If anything, it's just hardened. The one thing I feel bad about is that I'm such a participant in the system. I went to law school with no intention of being a lawyer, even at Stanford. I have no desire to step in a courtroom, no desire to be part of a system that is so unjust, that is so unfair, that is so racist, that's so inhumane. But here I am today practicing and profiting from that every single day. And I truly believe that we have seen, since I wrote that book a long time ago, 20 years ago or so now, we've seen the increase in civil disobedience, and we've seen people step up, and we've seen most recently people fighting back against ICE, literally when they're going to arrest somebody, trying to intervene. That's something that I never would have seen 20 years ago. I think it's a beautiful sight to see community coming together and fighting back, and hopefully we continue to see more of it. Not that I'm a Libra, I don't even like conflict. Like I don't like seeing it in the tension. My wife's been arrested 3 times engaging in civil disobedience on behalf of immigrants' rights, and it makes me nervous. It turns my stomach every time she does it. But I know what she's doing it for, and I know what she's about, and I love her. And I do think overall it is more needed within our community as well.
So, if somebody says that, Ray, I'm scared out of my mind, I need help, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Best way to get a hold of us, any social media platforms at Abogado Ray, Abogadoray, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and 602-910-4040 is our number. 24/7 answered by someone who's caring, passionate, and bilingual.
Okay, great. Thanks for coming on the show, Ray, and enjoyed it. You're a good guest.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate you, man.